Welcome back to another deep dive. I am so glad you're joining us today. If you are the kind of person who, really loves connecting the dots and having those sudden aha moments, but you absolutely hate getting bogged down by a ton of academic jargon, well, you are in the perfect place.
Yeah, we have a really fascinating one for you today. It is, it's incredibly relatable, honestly.
It really is. We are pulling from some excerpts of a spiritual and philosophical text. It's titled The Master as Guide in the Blizzard of Life.
Right, and our mission for this deep dive is to basically unpack this really rich, multi-layered parable. It's all about how we as humans seek guidance when our lives just suddenly get entirely chaotic.
Yeah, when things just completely fall apart. But before we step into the storm, so to speak,
Mm.
I do want to frame our approach for you, the listener,
Yeah.
because this material does contain some very specific religious and spiritual concepts.
Right, it explicitly mentions God, Christ, and the role of living spiritual masters.
Exactly. So I want to be crystal clear that our goal here is absolutely not to endorse any theological viewpoints or, tell you what to believe. We are simply exploring this impartially. We're looking at it as a really fascinating philosophical framework for understanding human struggle and mentorship.
Yeah, we're treating it as a map of the human condition.
Okay, let's unpack this. The whole narrative hook of this text is grounded in what starts out as a remarkably ordinary morning.
Yeah, it begins with this man standing at his window. He's watching his wife leave for church in the freezing cold, and he is just completely dismissive of her
I
faith.
think it's ridiculous.
Totally. He looks at the foundational story of her religion and just mocks the logic of it. He's asking out loud, why would a supreme infinite creator ever lower himself to adopt a limited, fragile human form?
Right, because to him, the concept of a divine incarnation just defies all intellectual reason. He's applying this very rigid human rationality to the concept of the divine.
Which is such a common human reaction, right?
Oh, absolutely. The idea of the infinite somehow compressing into the finite just feels horribly inefficient and frankly absurd to him. But, the universe has a funny way of delivering practical demonstrations.
It really does, because a few hours later, this massive winter storm hits his farm. I mean, it is a total whiteout.
Just a blinding blizzard.
Exactly. And over the howling wind outside, he hears these dull, heavy thumps against his living room window pane. So he bundles up, walks outside, and he finds a flock of wild geese stranded in his field.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, they were migrating, got caught in this freak blizzard, and now they are completely without shelter.
And the visual details the text gives here are so vital for understanding the broader allegory we're going to get into. These geese are not just, huddled together waiting out the storm peacefully.
No, not at all. They're flapping their wings frantically. They're flying short, blind distances and just crashing back into the snow.
It's pure disoriented panic.
Right. The storm has completely stripped away their natural navigational instincts.
And the man, standing there looking at this chaotic scene, he feels this overwhelming wave of compassion. Because he knows his massive heated barn is just a few dozen yards away. It's warm, it's safe, and the doors are wide open.
And he naturally assumes the geese will just see the open doors, recognize it as shelter, and simply walk inside.
Which, demonstrates his fundamental misunderstanding of their reality. Because a wild goose does not possess the conceptual framework to recognize a wooden building as a sanctuary.
To them, an open barn door is just a dark, ominous hole. It's terrifying.
Right. So passively opening the doors doesn't work. His next logical step is to try and create a pathway. He grabs a loaf of bread and starts leaving a trail of crumbs leading directly into the barn.
Which is very human of him.
Yeah, but the geese completely ignore it. So he escalates things. He decides to take the direct approach. He walks around behind the flock, starts waving his arms, and tries to herd them toward the warmth.
Oh no, that is the absolute worst tactic he could possibly use.
The absolute worst. The geese scatter in every single direction, burning whatever precious energy they have left. And reading this, the sheer frustration of the man is so palpable.
It's agonizing.
It really is. It reminds me of trying to rescue a terrified stray dog from the median of a busy highway. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, that's a perfect comparison.
Like, you have the absolute best intentions, you have a safe, warm car, but because you do not speak dog, your attempt to rescue looks exactly like an attempt to attack.
Exactly. The barrier to their salvation is entirely about communication and physical form. The man's human nature is instinctively terrifying to a wild bird.
And standing there in the freezing snow, the man finally realizes this. He literally shouts out in frustration, wondering why they won't just follow him. And then the epiphany hits. They will never follow a human.
He realizes, and he thinks to himself, if only I were a goose, then I could save them.
Right. And he doesn't just ponder this abstractly. He actually acts on it. He goes into the barn, grabs one of his own domesticated tame geese, carries it around behind the wild flock, and releases it.
And this is the turning point. The tame goose flies straight through the center of the panicked flock. It calls out in their exact language.
And what happens?
Without a single second of hesitation, the wild geese fall into formation behind the tame goose, and they follow it straight into the safety of the barn.
Wow. It's such a brilliant setup. And the narrative just beautifully closes its own loop right there. Because the man stands there watching the wild flock settle into the warmth, and his own words from that morning, the ones he said to his wife, they echo in his mind.
Yeah, he finally understands the answer to his own question. The philosophical puzzle of why the infinite would take human form is solved by his practical experience in the snow.
You have to meet the lost exactly where they are. You must appear in a form they instinctively recognize and trust, using a language they understand, to actually guide them out of the storm.
It's powerful, but this is exactly where the framework immediately pivots, because the text demands that we look inward. The man, the farm, the winter weather, these are all direct, intentional maps of our own internal condition.
So we are transitioning from the literal snowstorm to the metaphorical blizzards of human existence.
Right. The allegory explicitly identifies us, all of us, as those wild geese. We are the ones flapping about aimlessly in the creation.
And the weather.
The weather represents the unpredictable volatility of life. I mean, you can be sailing along for years, enjoying the sunshine, feeling entirely in control of your own destiny.
Like everything is perfectly managed.
Exactly. And then suddenly a medical diagnosis, a financial collapse, or the loss of a loved one just completely upends your reality.
And the normal coping mechanisms that keep you functional on a sunny day, they instantly fail.
They completely fall apart.
And, there's an incredibly poignant observation the framework makes regarding human nature during those sunny days. It highlights this tragic paradox about our motivation.
About complacency.
Yeah. When the weather is calm, we possess the emotional and physical energy to do the internal work. We have the time to build the sanctuary of our inner barn, as the text describes it. We can develop our spiritual and mental resilience.
But the sunshine creates a powerful illusion of permanence.
It does. We prioritize the external field over the internal barn. Because the sun is shining, we basically convince ourselves the blizzard is a myth.
Yeah, the framework points out that we fail to persistently knock at the door of our inner sanctuary when things are easy. The real tragedy is that the exact moment we have the luxury to prepare is the exact moment we lack the urgency to actually do so.
So when the storm inevitably hits, we have zero internal infrastructure to weather it.
We are caught completely exposed. We're flapping in a panic, burning energy, just trying to survive the sheer cold of the crisis.
Which brings us to the mechanism of that very first sound the man heard in the story, that thump on the window glass.
Because the geese weren't politely knocking on a human door asking for assistance, right?
No, they were crashing blindly into an invisible barrier. Yet the allegory treats that desperate, uncoordinated impact as a direct cry for help.
It does. That thump represents the breaking point of self-reliance. When we face insurmountable obstacles and our ability to manage our own reality just shatters, we instinctively search for an anchor. We send out a signal into the void.
It's this profound admission of powerlessness.
Exactly.
But what really stands out as a vital nuance here, for anyone listening, is that this thump isn't strictly reserved for external disasters. It isn't just about hitting rock bottom because you lost your job or your relationship fell apart.
That is a really important distinction. The underlying philosophy argues that sometimes the signal is driven by a deep, unbearable internal longing.
Like an existential crisis.
Yes. You might be standing in the middle of a perfectly sunny day, externally successful, everything looks great on paper, and yet you are consumed by a profound yearning for meaning, for permanence, for God.
And that yearning itself becomes the heavy impact on the glass.
Exactly. And the framework offers an absolute certainty here. No matter if the thump is caused by external trauma or internal longing, the sound is heard. The guide is actively listening for the indication that you are lost.
Okay, so if that desperate thump on the glass is the signal, there has to be something on the other side of the window that actually understands the sound. Which brings us to the human equivalent of the tame goose. The framework introduces the concept of the living master.
Right. And the argument presented is that sending abstract spiritual theories into a blizzard is utterly useless. I mean, if you hand a freezing, panicked person a stack of dense philosophical texts, they are going to stay lost.
Yeah, I'm not reading a textbook while freezing to death.
Exactly. Complex theories require the intellect, and the intellect is the very first thing that shuts down during a crisis.
So we need a human face on the rescue mission.
We do. The philosophy suggests that without a living example in front of us, we just remain trapped in the cold. We need a guide whose earthly persona we can actually relate to, someone who speaks our language, who we might even find charming or deeply inspiring in their balance and wisdom.
Okay, I have to push back on this concept, though, because
Okay.
my skeptical alarm bells are definitely ringing here.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
I mean, the framework suggests that, much like the wild geese blindly following the tame goose, we must eventually surrender completely to the master's guidance to navigate out of the storm. But wait, asking a human being to offer absolute surrender to another human being simply because they project a charming earthly persona or seem perfectly balanced, that sounds incredibly dangerous.
It sounds like a cult, right?
Exactly. History is literally littered with charismatic leaders who use their relatable personas to lead well-meaning people directly off a cliff.
That is such a crucial challenge. But exploring the mechanics of this relationship actually reveals that the framework agrees with your skepticism.
Really? How so?
Well, the earthly persona, the physical charm, the relatable personality, is simply the initial breadcrumb. It's just the visual form necessary to keep the wild geese from scattering in terror.
Right.
But the personality is not the true substance of the connection. The framework states that our rational minds cannot actually comprehend what the guide truly is.
So if the physical body is just the initial hook and our rational minds can't grasp the core reality, there has to be something beneath the surface that we are actually tuning into. It almost sounds like they're describing a hidden frequency.
You've hit the exact mechanism. That frequency is referred to as the shab.
Okay, let's explore the shab. How does the framework actually define it?
The shab is described as the eternal melody, the divine vibration, the fundamental creative resonance of the universe.
The divine vibration.
Yes. The argument here is that while our rational intellectual mind is entirely consumed by the noise of the blizzard, our soul inherently recognizes this silent frequency, and the master basically acts as the physical conduit for this vibration.
Oh, I see. So it bypasses the intellect entirely. It's not about being persuaded by a logical argument. It's about an intuitive recognition.
Precisely. To illustrate this mechanism, the philosophy relies on another natural analogy. Think about it. Wild geese do not need a map to migrate south, right?
Right, they just know.
They intuitively use the sun and the celestial bodies as navigational markers. They are biologically attuned to follow the light.
Okay, that makes sense.
So in that exact same way, the framework argues that human beings possess an inherent biological urge to search for eternity. There's a literal magnetic pull inside us toward our point of origin.
Wow, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that completely reframes the entire concept of surrender.
It really does.
You aren't subjugating your free will to the human ego of the master. You are aligning yourself with that underlying vibration, the Shabbat that just happened to be operating through them.
Exactly. The text explicitly notes that it is the shabbed form we unknowingly recognize and love. The physical body of the guide is merely the biological instrument making that eternal vibration audible over the howling wind of the storm.
That is fascinating.
We trust the guide not because of their human charisma, but because we hear the authentic call of our own true home resonating in their voice.
That makes the mechanics of the parable hold together perfectly. Because the wild geese didn't follow the tame goose because they, admired the color of his feathers. They followed it because the sound it produced resonated with their deepest survival instinct.
Exactly.
But recognizing the guide is only the first step, isn't it? I mean, the man didn't instantly teleport the flock into the barn. They still had to flap their wings, fight the crosswinds, and physically fly through the storm.
They had to put in the work.
Right. So what is the human equivalent of that flight? How do we actively move from the field to the sanctuary?
The framework treats this as an intensely active journey. The route from the freezing field to the warm barn represents the transition from the external to the internal.
Moving inward.
Yeah. We are moving away from the darkness of illusion, which is our panicked attachment to all the chaotic events of the outside world, and moving toward the radiant light of the inner sanctuary.
And the mechanism for achieving this flight, according to the text, is meditation.
That's right.
But we really need to dig into how sitting quietly equates to flying through a blizzard. Because just sitting in a silent room doesn't stop the literal storm outside.
No, it doesn't stop the external weather, but it entirely changes your relationship to it. You see, the blizzard isn't just the difficult circumstances of your life, it is your panicked, frantic reaction to those circumstances. It is the aimless flapping.
Oh, I get it.
So meditation is the mechanical process of withdrawing your attention from the external freezing wind. You actively pull your sensory focus inward, retuning your internal receiver away from the chaos and locking it onto the frequency of the guide.
On to the Shabbat. It's a complete attentional shift.
Yeah.
And there is a beautiful, deeply human nuance to how this practice is actually described in the source material. Because the framework does not present meditation as this rigid, punitive chore.
No, it's not a punishment.
Right. It isn't a harsh discipline you must endure to, like, earn your spot in the barn. It explicitly states that the seeker meditates simply because they want to be with the guide.
The motivation shifts entirely. It moves from a fear of the storm to a profound love for the sanctuary. It is an act of longing.
That changes everything.
It really does. Through the consistent practice of redirecting your attention inward, the guide is able to inculcate a deeper divine love within you. And as that internal resonance grows louder, the external noise simply loses its power over you.
The framework notes that this growing internal connection dispels our doubts, allowing them to just vanish like the passing storm. The weather outside might still be raging, but you are no longer at its mercy because you are securely locked onto that navigational beacon.
And the guide never tires of helping. They are relentlessly committed to encouraging this practice, asking you to keep tuning in, ensuring you don't lose the signal.
Just as the farmer persevered through his frustration, trying method after method, until he successfully brought the geese out of the cold.
Exactly. The living guide possesses this inexhaustible commitment to bringing the seeker home. It is a profoundly optimistic view of spiritual mentorship.
It really is. So bringing all of this directly back to you, the listener, whether you choose to view this text through a deeply spiritual and religious lens, or if you apply it purely as a secular psychological metaphor for surviving the sheer difficulty of human existence, the insights here are incredibly potent.
They absolutely are.
It serves as this stark reminder of the absolute necessity of building your inner barn during the calm, sunny weather. You have to construct that internal resilience while you have the energy so that a sanctuary actually exists when your world inevitably falls apart.
Because the storm always comes eventually.
Always. Furthermore, it highlights the life-saving value of finding mentors guides who speak your exact language and understand your specific form when you are too lost in the storm to save yourself.
It provides a very clear roadmap for finding solid ground when everything else around you is spinning. But, there is one final piece of this allegory that pushes beyond the original text and lands squarely in our modern reality.
Oh, where does it intersect with us today?
Well, the wild geese in the story had a distinct advantage. They immediately recognized the authentic call of the tame goose because it was literally the only sound cutting through the wind. Their instincts were totally unobstructed.
Right, there wasn't a flock of fake geese out there trying to trick them.
Exactly. But think about your own life right now. We exist in a modern digital blizzard. We are constantly battered by endless notifications, conflicting advice, self-proclaimed gurus, and an absolute avalanche of noise.
It's overwhelming.
It is. So, in an environment where 1,000 different voices are all claiming to be the tame goose, how do you distinguish the true, authentic call of a genuine guide from just another dangerous distraction in the storm?
Wow. That is a phenomenal question, and it is exactly the kind of puzzle I want you to chew on as you navigate whatever weather you are currently facing in your own life. Thank you so much for exploring this profound framework with us today.
It's been great.
Keep questioning the noise, keep building your inner sanctuary, and stay curious until our next deep dive.